really understand your customer, that's in any business,
Hmm.
and make sure your products are tailored to fit that customer. Shop your competition. Those would be the two biggest things for income. In terms of reducing your expenses, start looking at contract services. Every year you renew some contracts, make sure you shop them well, make sure you get multiple bids. So even though you've been using the same landscape guy for years, make sure their pricing is reasonable for what they offer you and get three different bids. And sometimes you can even play them off of each other and say, how badly do you want my business? I've got three
Right.
properties in this area, right? Or five properties, etc. So use your volume discount.
Are you looking to achieve massive success in your life without dealing with costly investment nightmares? If yes, then this is the podcast for you. Here, we provide engineers and busy professionals all the secrets and strategies to create multiple streams of income, build generational wealth, and live a meaningful life by design. Here's your host, Ted Patel.
Hey everyone, this is Ted Patel and welcome to this week's edition of Decoding Cashflow Podcast. I'm here with Sandhya Seshadri, who is a founder of Engineered Capital and have invested as a limited and general partner in over 3,000 doors across the United States. After working for years in corporate, she transitioned to commercial real estate due to tax advantages and ability to uniquely force appreciate each asset. It's become her mission now to spread knowledge and help others capitalize on all the power of passive investments in multifamily real estate. Sandhya, welcome to Decoding Cashflow. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Ted, for having me on your show. And nice that we met in person at a conference a year ago. And now I
Ye-
finally get to come on your show. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's always nice to reconnect, right?
Mhm,
So yeah, hopefully, we'll stay in touch for sure,
mhm,
and we won't give this much gap now, a
mhm.
year worth
Yeah.
of gap. All right. So Sandhya, before we dive deep into passive side of real estate investments, underwriting, asset management, all these kind of details, why don't you give our listeners a little bit background about yourself? How did you get started in real estate, and what's your main focus as of now?
So I got started in real estate by attending a weekend event where they went over the details of how to buy large apartment complexes. See, I had always shied away from doing single family rentals or fix and flips because I didn't have a strong construction background. So I didn't feel confident about taking something on like that. But when it's a
Mhm.
large multifamily, you can hire third party property management to do all the day to day tasks for you. You can have maintenance staff on site full time to take care of the tenants, toilets, trash, and termites, lovely four T's
Yeah.
that we talk about. So then I would be an asset manager, which is very similar to my background in project management, where
Mhm.
you look at the big picture, but then you also come down to the details as needed so that the asset keeps performing smoothly. So asset management is definitely one of my biggest focus, and so is
Mhm.
underwriting. And I live in
Yeah.
the Dallas area now for more than 33 years. This is my market. So this is where all my general partner deals are located, where I'm part of the team that manages the deal. But
Mhm.
when I invest passively, I look at other markets as well. So I've done a bit
Mhm.
of both active and passive investing.
All right. So when did you get started into real estate? At what
I
point?
got started about 5 years ago. So in
Hmm.
early 2019 is when I got started. And I
Okay.
first invested passively using retirement funds from my prior 401k because I was no longer with that company. And that's a
Hmm.
nice source of income that people don't realize they still have available to them. And it
Yeah.
allowed me to sort of be a passenger in a plane, is the analogy I use, before I want to become a co pilot and then a pilot on my own. You first got to see if you even like a plane ride. And so that helped me experience it. And then I was able to then join with others with more experience and get into my first deal by being part of a larger mentorship program. And since then,
Hmm.
I have done about 8 deals, and three have gone a full cycle, meaning I bought it, sold it, and returned the money to investors. And I have five current assets that I manage in the Dallas area.
Awesome. And before you got started in the real estate, right? You worked in the corporate world,
Yes, I
and
did.
so what
Yeah.
is that experience from transitioning from corporate to full-time real estate investor, and what made you do that actually?
So I went from corporate to actually full time trading stock because I was good at
Hmm.
that. And then I went into real estate for the tax benefits. So it was three careers almost separately. But
Okay.
initially, the corporate world was great as a training institute for getting the experience, working with people, working in teams, traveling internationally, etc., using my college degree, which is in engineering, to, make products, beautiful products that go into all the electronics, that we use every day. But it was a very demanding career. And once I had children and I had to travel internationally on a regular basis, that got difficult. And I also was going to evening and weekend school to get my MBA. So that's where I learned about stock market. And so I traded for quite a few years full time. And then I stumbled into real estate only for mainly the tax advantages, because I didn't have a great business idea to go and start a business. And so when you have a husband who works W-2 and then all I do is trade stocks or have a W-2, there's not much room to save on taxes. So it's the taxes that drew me to real estate.
And I'm pretty much sure, after you dived into real estate, stock became the past. Now you might be more focused on real estate than the stocks because of the advantages that real estate provides, the less volatility than the stock, and different, as you mentioned, tax advantages, depreciations,
Yeah, I do both.
1031 exchange. Yeah.
I actually do both. I still trade
All right.
stocks quite a bit. In fact, I was just doing my trades this morning before I came on your call. So I do both. But, I like stocks for the liquidity that it offers me, because, if I needed cash immediately, that's where I would go, is to the stock market, versus I would go to real estate for the long-term play of building, wealth, because the appreciation is there depending on the markets you pick and how you force appreciate it with your, asset management and business plan.
Okay. So, Sandhya, let's talk about your first deal, right? You said you attended the conference and you got inspired from the conference on the benefits that the real estate can provide, and then you dive deep into it. You partnered with the operators, or and then got started, of course, as an LP first and then the GP. But let's talk about your first GP deal. What did it look like, and how did you how did you source that deal, and how did you manage that deal till the closing?
So I live in the Dallas area where there's a lot of major brokers. So Marcus and Millichap actually had this deal listed, so anybody could have had access to it. But being part of a network, I had the clout of my mentor, Brad Sumrock, and his affiliation. And so it was nice to get tours, etc. And I found some other people from the group with more experience than me, but they were out of state and they were looking to get into the Texas market. And so they were the brains, and I chased after them and I said, partner with me, because here's how I can help you. You don't have to make as many trips. I'll be your boots on the ground. I'll do all the running around, etc. And so they really, quite reluctantly took me on. And then COVID struck in 2020. So they couldn't travel. So I ended up learning and doing a lot of the asset management, showing up to the property, being there like at least on a weekly basis, etc. So that sort of became my, wheelhouse, if you will, my area of expertise, because I was always talking to property management, all the vendors, etc., and learning the nuts and bolts of how this gets done. And so since then, I've always been the underwriter as well as asset manager on my deals. And you still have to, raise capital. But the first deal was a home run. It was 86 doors. It was, let's say, about a $2 to $2.5 million kind of raise. And we ended up selling it 27 months later because, at that time, if you go from 2019 to 2021, interest rates also dropped quite a bit, and the business plan worked. Things went smoothly considering it was an older property. And so we ended up selling it for, making more than triple investors' money. So that's quite the home run that helped me there for launch and, get back more loyal investors for future deals. But I wouldn't say that those expectations are realistic now. We actually only projected a 70% increase in 5 years. And we ended up doing, in 27 months, tripling people's money. So I would attribute half of that to just the interest rates dropping, but the other half is to actually executing the business plan. So since then, I've done, 7 more deals and 3 have gone a full cycle.
Awesome. All right. And as you said, you only look in the Dallas market because, you want to watch the property, operate the property closely, and make sure you get the most out of that deal.
Yes, right. I just think that the comfort in being able to frequently visit your properties, the knowledge of a market where I've spent more than 30 years, right? That's hard to beat. So if I ever looked at another market, I would want to partner with somebody who's local, who's boots on the ground, who really knows that market inside out. Not somebody living in the West Coast, never invested before, let's say in Raleigh, and then wants to do a deal there, because I really think that local market knowledge is very important. I think knowing the submarket, knowing the crime rates, the median income, you can get a lot of data online, but it's
Yeah.
not the same as being able to hop in my car and being in my property within 30 minutes if there's an emergency. And I like that convenience.
Mhm. And talking about the first deal, right? On that property also, you did the asset management, or you had your partners do the asset management on that
We
property?
all did together. They were the
Okay,
leads, and
they were
I
the
was
leads.
like the person learning. I consider it like my internship, where I'm listening in on every call, and slowly after a few calls, it's like, hey, I actually understand this. I actually know what's going on, and then I'm showing up to the properties more and more, and
Yeah,
then you learn the business, right? 6 months into something, you learn a lot,
yeah, you learn a lot.
especially if
And
you're
now
constantly
you're
on
a
the
pro.
properties. Well, I'm definitely know a lot more today than I did 5 years ago. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way.
All right. So talking about the underwriting, as of now, if you have to look at any property, uh,
Mhm.
you got a property. If you need to underwrite, of course, you look at all the different criterias like the crime rate, population, rent growth,
Mhm.
market. But what about the numbers? What are the things that you look in the numbers, which will say, okay, there is an operational deficiency in the project management side of it, and you can say, okay, there's a deficiency. I can come in and I can improve it. What are those things?
As an immigrant, I'm always like a bargain hunter. So I
Mhm.
always look for the bargains, right? So I'm going to
Yeah.
buy my Christmas stuff after Christmas, just because it's going to be heavily discounted. The same way I look for a deal that's been long held by the same owner for a while, because
Okay.
then they haven't had the pressure to bring the rents up to market quite, in the frequency at which a syndicator group might do. Like every 2 to 3 years, if a syndicator group has been buying that property, then there's not as much meat left on the bone,
Mm.
versus the rents are already far below market if the same person has held it for more than 10, 15 years. So I always look for something that's been long held by the same
Okay.
owner, because then I have a basic organic rent growth for which I don't have to spend a lot of money to update the property to get the rent bump. So number one, that is it. And
Hmm.
then when you underwrite it, I like to nowadays go for fixed rate interest rate debt, because that's what my investors like. That's how they will invest. If anything is a floating rate, they're hearing too much in the news about the deals going bad, so they won't do it. So the debt has to work. And
Okay.
so when it's an agency on a fixed rate loan, it's a stabilized property with 90% occupancy and at least a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio, etc. So the
Hmm.
lending side is very important when you look at deals. Crime and median income is always important. But then as far as the opportunity still left in the deal, what have they not done to it, right? And that comes from a thorough competitive analysis of properties within a 1 mile radius. And so being
Hmm.
in the Dallas market, if you give me an address, I probably know right away if I'm even interested in that property. But secondly, I probably know somebody who owns one of those properties within a 1 mile radius. So I get actual data on expenses. I get actual data on like insurance and taxes and things like that, as well as even your chances of, let's say, going to the local justice of peace for evictions and that level of detail. I probably know someone who's operating a property right there. And so that gives me the competitive edge when I underwrite these deals to be realistic in my numbers. I also have multiple property management companies, third party companies that I use on my property. So I find somebody who's already running a property in that little city, because every city has its own little nuances, its code compliance, etc. So I
Yeah.
make sure I get a budget from a property management company who manages already a property there, because then it's more accurate. And then
Hmm.
you go asset manage once you get the deal. But again, having done several deals in Dallas, it's not that hard for me to get brokers to trust me, right? So what does
Yeah.
a seller or a broker want? They want certainty of closing. And
Yeah.
so once you've proven yourself, then it's easier to get these deals awarded.
It's true. And that gives you an edge, right? Because you're in the same market, you know people, and
Mhm,
you know the area, crime rate, everything.
mhm.
Uh, of course.
Yeah, it's hard to be the local expert when it comes to the market, right? In real
Yeah,
estate, market and location is so important.
that's true.
You can't move these
And
buildings.
yeah. So for my business, right? I stay local for my construction, the ground up construction of the luxury single family and small multifamily. I stay
Mhm.
local where I can visit my properties almost if not every day, then every other day to see what's
Correct.
going on. Yeah. And
That's a
people
big
have been,
competitive
yeah,
advantage. Yeah.
yeah. There are a few leads also, like, they wanted me to invest in the other states or
Mhm.
these ground up projects. But as
Yeah.
of now, I'm not interested.
You can't keep an eye on it the way you can if it's in your own backyard, the
That's true.
frequency, the convenience of just being able, like I could visit all my properties in, less than half a day if I really wanted to just drive all of them.
Yeah.
So that's a convenience that is hard to beat.
Yeah. And as a part of the asset management team, what are the things that you'll do to decrease expense, increase NOI, and increase the value of the property? What are your normal, steps or criterias?
So never forget that rent is still your primary source of income in these properties. That's your bread,
Yeah.
that's your butter. So
Mhm.
pay very, very close attention to that net rental income every month.
Mhm.
And start shopping your competitors closely. And by that, I don't just mean their websites and their data, but try to personally visit the competition. And then another thing that people don't think of doing is shopping your own property. So anytime you change a rent or you add an amenity, etc., do a secret shopping, right? Have a VA, have somebody call the property or have somebody else visit the property. See if your own property is being represented correctly with all the things that you want to promote about it. So those two
Mhm.
things, shopping your competition and shopping your own property, is going to give you a lot of clues on what you need to adjust. Just like, the seats on a plane. As and when the seats get filled up, oh, that price goes up, right? Only
Yeah.
2 seats left. You got to pay $1,000 now versus the person who booked it 6 months ago paid only $200 for a seat right next to you. So it's sort of like that. So keep shopping the competition as often as you can. Know your
Mhm.
strengths and know your weaknesses of your property. If the property nearby has better amenities, then you may have to sell something else or offer something else. So
Yeah.
that's one of the most important things is your source of income. And then other income. There are many sources. So really understand who's your primary resident you're targeting at your property and what
Mhm.
are they willing to pay for. So let's say it's a C-class property, which means the median income there is like 60,000, 50,000 kind of
Yeah.
income. You can't just ask them to pay $400 more because you put a stainless steel fridge and some platinum finish and granite countertop, right?
Yeah.
Instead, maybe you add washer dryers or washer dryer connections and charge them $50 more because that's something they are willing to pay for. They are able to pay for it. Because
Yeah.
if your median income isn't enough to support your rents, you're going to end up with a large delinquency problem. And that's going to be painful. So really understand your customer. That's in any business.
Mhm.
And make sure your products are tailored to fit that customer. Shop your competition. Those would be the two biggest things for income. In terms of reducing your expenses, start looking at contract services. Every year you renew some contracts, make sure you shop them well, make sure you get multiple bids. So even though you've been using the same landscape guy for years, make sure their pricing is reasonable for what they offer you and get 3 different bids. And sometimes you can even play them off of each other and say, how badly do you want my business? I've got 3 properties in this area, right? Or 5 properties, etc. So use your volume discount, use that through your property management company, and then make sure your utility contracts are in place so that you're not paying, you in Texas, we have, we can negotiate those prices for utilities, etc. In terms
Okay.
of other expense reduction ideas, make sure that your personnel matches your needs. At the beginning, when you take over, you may need more hands on deck to take care of work orders, etc. But once you're
Mhm.
under cruise control, 6 months into the property and things are more streamlined, do you really need the same personnel or can you share them across the property? Shop insurance well ahead of time. In Texas, our insurance rates have been going up quite a bit. And so if you have enough, give yourself enough time instead of being rushed last minute, shopping that is another way you can reduce your expenses. We always protest taxes in Texas. That's pretty common. Those are some of the things I would do for your expense reduction. Now, those two, right? Your revenue minus your operating expenses is your net operating income that influences the value or price of your property. NOI divided by cap rate. But below the line, we have what's called capital expenses, right? So you're
Yeah.
planning to do a renovation, plan to do some repairs, etc. Again, having a set of vendors who can serve you and have served others in the business. Dallas is a big, large metro. It's easy for me to get a bunch of different vendors to bid on the same project. And so, same with the supply list. If this is what my interior is going to look like, have all those SKU numbers approved and the prices on that. So it's like, almost like an established matrix of, okay, go order these every time that you have to renovate a unit. And so make it
Yeah.
like an assembly line, like buy in bulk, the same colored gray paint or the same tile or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so streamline the operations, see if you can bulk source some of it, etc. And that'll save you on your capital expenses.
Awesome. And what about, have you encountered any deal which went south, or, which was like a very, what do you say? Like a tough deal, the toughest experience you might have faced in uh, the syndication of the multifamily?
Yeah, there was a property we had acquired that's not too far from downtown Dallas, and we had a lot of trouble in that property just because of the area around it. So that's always a good clue. Don't buy it in areas where, within 3-4 miles, there's other, shady stuff going on. Then it's somehow going to come to your property as well. But in this particular property, I was in the leasing office with my partner, and we were about to step out with this designer to go look at some units, and I had forgotten to get the layout of the property, because we had just acquired it. I didn't yet know all my buildings and units. And if it weren't for that, I would have probably been shot. There was like a drive-by shooter with a automatic rifle, and there was a series of shots. Apparently, they were
Wow.
just driving around. It's part of a gang. And this gang member got down from the vehicle and ran through our property, and he was shooting at her. And so neither the intended victim nor the shooter were part of the property. But just because we were in an area where these things happen, it happened. And I had forgotten the map, and I was going back to get it from the leasing manager before I stepped out of the office. So we were 30 seconds away, me and my partner, from basically getting shot at a property. So, crazy things happen,
Wow.
but you just got to tell yourself, there's a reason why I'm still alive. So I was spared for a reason. So let's keep going, things like
Yeah,
that.
that's a lucky escape, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Or it was meant to be. It's
Yeah.
meant to be a reminder that, don't take anything for granted. Don't take every moment for granted. There's a reason you're still here. But in terms
Yeah.
of financials, right, we've got properties on floating rate bridge loans that did struggle for a little bit, but we were able to refinance one of them, and I've got one more in the process. And so, you just got to start getting creative when these things happen, and then have your lender guide you. Let's say you have a timeline of 6 to 12 months for this bridge loan maturity.
Yep.
Have your lender broker guide you to say, you need to meet these targets for financials every month for me to be able to get you out of this. And then you go translate that into specific actions and ask your team on site to say, how are you going to get me X dollars in collections or Y dollars in NOI, whatever those targets are. Make sure the full team is on board and keep a close watch. But have the direction come from your lender broker, because they have the visibility and understand how different lenders will view your property, which is very different from the way a broker is going to view your property. So
Yeah,
those perspectives are very helpful.
that's very true. If you get a guidance from your lender, at least before 12 months, then the T12
Yeah,
for that period before you finance, you can make sure those numbers are better than expected.
correct.
You can improve efficiency, operations, whatever it needs to be, right?
Yeah, because some lenders look at your T12 for expenses, but
Yeah.
then they are willing to look just at T3 for your rents or income. So accordingly, you need to understand what loan product you're targeting and have a very experienced loan broker who understands how you operate, as well as who's very familiar with these lenders, to direct you accordingly.
Awesome. All right. Now, we already talked about the underwriting, asset management. Now I'd like to move on to maybe the pros and cons of passive investments, right? Uh, uh, we talked about a few things like tax benefits and depreciation. But if you'd like to give our listeners a little bit more insight on benefits of the passive investment, what are the pros and cons to invest in multifamily? Yeah.
The biggest benefit, I think, is that you get to participate in real estate without taking on the headaches or the liabilities. So
That's
you don't
true.
have to do the dirty work, but you also don't have to take on the responsibilities of like signing a loan, being the one who gets sued if there's a problem. If a vendor is not paid, they can, have a lien on your property. You don't have to deal with any of those hassles and headaches if you like what you do full time, like maybe it's your full time job, maybe you're an entrepreneur with a business, etc. You don't need one more job. People think they can just go do real estate on the side, and in some cases you might luck out. But all it takes, especially in a single family rental, is if that tenant doesn't pay you 1 month, or you have one repair to do that month, pretty much all your profits are down the tube. At least in the Dallas area, when I looked into single family rentals and being my own, owner, it was like barely $200 or $300 a month in profit, but one repair and your entire year's profits would be wiped out. So I really think that pooling your money and having the economies of scale of going into a large apartment investment passively is a really nice way to get started, because it's just like the analogy I use. You're a passenger in a plane. You're not responsible if there's turbulence. The pilot handles all of that. And so it's good to have that experience of a plane ride and then being a co-pilot, which is a co-general partner, before you're the lead, before you're the pilot. And that's why I highly recommend passive investing. Again, the biggest benefit being no headaches and liabilities, but all the benefits of real estate, like the appreciation in a market like Dallas. 5 or 10 years from today, a building in Dallas could be worth a lot more. And you could do that without doing the work yourself.
Yeah. And as I said, right, if you own single family, 2 family, 3 family, one property, two property might be okay to manage, now and then, but you won't be able to scale. And if you start buying more properties, you won't be able to focus on your, the other mainstream of income that you have. It will take away time from there. And of course, there's a headache, people or tenant calling you any time of the day or night to fix any problem in the property, as well as the other thing about the loans, right? If you have to get a mortgage on any of your property, so much headache, so much paperwork. And if you own multiple properties, with single family, 2 family, whatever it is, at one point you'll get tired of submitting papers to the banks for each property every time you have to refinance or.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the time that it drains from you when you manage small properties yourself, quadplex, duplex, etc., or the margins you will lose if you employ third-party property management for such tiny properties. They take a very big chunk. So the economies of scale are what make it hard to beat for passive investing in apartments. And I still passively invest in apartments. Even though I'm a lead general partner, people think you do one or the other, and I do both. And same way, I still do some for a portion of my portfolio in the stock market for the liquidity, because, buildings are somewhat illiquid for a while, and you get the big upside when you sell them. So till you sell them, you get a little bit of cash flow, but not quite as much. So if you needed a big chunk of money, it's still nice to have liquidity with your, nowadays it's treasuries and the stock market.
Yeah. And I started the same way in apartment buildings. I started as an LP before I invested few deals. I think I started with Carolinas and Florida. I invested as LP in those market, and then hatched down, or worked with the other partners, become the co-partner in few deals.
Very nice.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a nice way to learn also. If you are interested in getting into the active side of the business, always start with the passive. You learn the, trades, and if you have time and if you're willing to do it, of course you can switch to the passive investment side, active investment side of it.
Yeah, for me, the big one is when people are having full-time jobs that they must have, that they cannot quit for some time for various reasons, right? Some people do it because they want the medical benefits, etc. And then they also try to do apartment investing. Well, you're only free mostly in the evenings. It's hard to have a flexible enough schedule to leave in the drop of a hat to go check on your properties. Asset management calls with the property management happen during the day. A lot of vendors, your lender, your legal, they're all only available during the day. So it's very hard
9 to 5.
manage both.
They also work 9 to 5. So
yeah, it's hard to juggle both and still do a proper job, especially when it involves other people's money. You want to have at least 1 or 2 people on your team who are full-time in real estate.
That's true. All right, Sandhya, I'm loving this conversation, but want to be meaningful of your time, mindful of your time, and want to switch to the final round of questions. And before we get on that, is there anything else that you'd like to tell to our listeners?
I want to say that set yourself a deadline and take action, because if you don't set a deadline a year from today, you'll be exactly in the same place. So almost think of it like preparing for a semester. Have some milestones, have weekly, monthly kind of milestones to learn and grow your knowledge in preparation for that semester exam, if you will. So that at the end of that semester, if you give yourself 3, 5 months, you have a decision. You've gotten all the data you need to make a decision whether or not you want to get into this business. And do that, because otherwise you're just drifting away, chasing every shiny object that comes along your path.
Well, I can't agree more on that for sure.
Okay.
All right, Sandhya, ready for the final round?
Sure.
Okay. Which is the one book that you'll recommend which had the most impact on your life or on your business?
I really like The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. It sort of sets the tone for the beginning of the day by doing your things that you must do that gets you in a right frame of mind to tackle whatever the day gives you. And you can keep stacking good habits on top of that. So you don't have to get up at 4 a.m., but even if you start your Miracle Morning at 7 a.m., do those things and it's really good. I also want to recommend this book, Win-Win Wealth Strategy by Tom Wheelwright. It's an excellent book for you to understand taxes.
I haven't read the other one, the second one, but yeah, I'll put it on my list for sure. And The Miracle Morning, right? I recently finished the next version of that, which was The Miracle Equation. Both books, awesome.
Yeah. Unwavering faith plus extraordinary efforts.
Yeah.
So put that in and you will have amazing results. That's your basic magic in life.
Yeah. All right. Sandhya, what are your main source of information to learn and grow?
I love podcasts and I love books, and I follow people in my industry who are leaders. So Marcus and Village App, Greystone, Greystar. There's a lot of companies that put out a lot of reports that I subscribe to and learn from. I also read a lot on LinkedIn. That's my most active platform. And then in terms of podcasts for multifamily, Best Ever is a great podcast, and there are several such podcasts that focus on that. For the lending side and the financing side, Peak Multifamily has one, Old Capital has one, etc. So those are my biggest sources of information in addition to conferences.
Okay. And what is what is the best investment or business advice that you like to give to our listeners?
Take the advice only of people who've done or achieved what you want to be doing. Don't take advice from people who've never done it before, because they're going to tell you not to do it. I'm surrounded by W-2s in my world of engineering and medical and all of those professionals. They've never started a business in real estate, so they don't know. So you've got to go find the room of people who've done what you want to do and only take advice from them.
Yep. Surround yourself with the like-minded people who's goal-oriented and who has already achieved what you're trying to do. Right?
Yeah.
That's one. Yeah. All right. Sandhya, before the final question, how can Decoding Cashflow listeners get in touch with you?
Find me on LinkedIn. Find me at engineered-capital.com. That's my company. And you can download a free checklist to vet sponsors and ask questions before you invest. But LinkedIn and Facebook are the two platforms where I'm most prevalent. And certainly you can get a hold of me through TED.
That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Sandhya, it was a pleasure talking to you. And thanks for sharing all your knowledge about the multifamily real estate and passive income.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you having me on your show.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Decoding Cashflow, brought to you by Aster Capital. If you found value in this episode, then please share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. And make sure to act on what you've learned. If you want Ted Patel to personally help you reach your goals, then feel free to set up a one-on-one call with him. Also, visit us at astercapital.com for more free resources. Content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. As always, please consult your own advisor before making any investment decisions or setting a course of action. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Decoding Cashflow, and we'll catch you in the next episode.